1.5.
1.5 degrees
global warming
in the next 5 years.
The accelerating climate crisis has really been hitting the headlines lately. But wait, 1.5 degrees by 2027? Recently this made the news.
for the first time ever
Global warming has exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius
for an entire year.
It was actually anticipated that this important threshold would only be reached in the next few years or the next decade, but now scientists recently published data showing that we just passed this benchmark. So let's actually clarify what's happening here. Have we already exceeded the key 1.5 degree limit agreed in the Paris Climate Accord for good? And why has this red line already been crossed?
There is this tendency towards higher temperature, and this is largely driven by changes in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, so the CO2 and water vapor and methane and so on. And this has been the main driver for this constant warming. But superimposed to this warming, there are oscillations, there are fluctuations.
One of those fluctuations is exceptionally high solar activity. The other is a warm weather phenomenon called El Niño. Translated from Spanish, El Niño means the child or the boy.
It sounds harmless,
but it's not.
Last seen in 2016, it led to the world's hottest year on record.
That's because El Niño impacts ocean temperature, which in turn affects the climate.
So the El Niño phase is also called the warm phase, because as the upwelling of cold water on the coastline of South America and the Western Pacific is suppressed, the overall temperatures in the Pacific rise.
El Niño is a natural climate cycle and is associated with changing wind patterns and higher water temperatures in the East Pacific, so basically the ocean off the coast of Ecuador, Colombia and Costa Rica. Here's a NASA illustration from a previous El Niño event. Warmer waters just several degrees above average temperatures in the region influence ocean currents and weather patterns in large parts of the world.
All of a sudden, the rather wet areas in Indonesia and Australia have a dry anomaly. And in South America, you have very wet conditions in areas that are normally very dry. And with these patterns, there's also extreme weather related.
And higher temperatures in the atmosphere. How much warmer it will get during the current El Niño is still unclear. The good news, the phenomenon is expected to end by spring this year. But is that a reason to relax? Unfortunately not.
An analogy I like is like a ball rolling down a slope, and that's the climate change. The ball keep going down because there is a slope, and then on top of this slope there are stones and holes and branches or things that may affect the trajectory of the ball, and so the ball bounces around in different directions. And that's the El Niño, the variation in the solar input, the volcanic eruption, or all the rest. But still, after a while, the ball will be farther down the slope.
Floods in Pakistan, wildfires in Croatian tourist centers last year, heavy storms in Brazil in January, heat waves around the world. Weather extremes linked to planetary heating are already causing catastrophic damages to lives and economies. And that's all on top of bringing the planet closer to climate thresholds that trigger rapid and probably irreversible changes.
I'd call them critical organs of the Earth that are important for planetary stability as a whole. And examples for tipping elements are the Greenland ice sheet, which has approximately 7 meters of sea level rise, the Western Arctic ice sheet, which has between 3 to 5 meters of sea level rise if melted down.
Other systems in danger to tip over are coral reefs and the Amazon. Recently, scientists expressed alarm over the latest findings that the so-called AMAC, a system of ocean currents in the Atlantic, is about to shift due to rapid ice melt. If it were to fail, Europe would see a dramatic drop in temperatures of up to 10 degrees on average. In southern hemisphere countries, warming could intensify, and in the Amazon region the rainy and dry season could be reversed. Sea levels would rise at a speed that would make it impossible for humans to adapt in time.
So all these systems are now showing signs of a beginning instability, and that warns us basically that we should stop global warming as soon as we can and then get back to safe temperatures, which are on the order, long-term on the order of 1 degree. And the higher we get above 1.5 degrees, which is really a physical limit, the more or the higher the risk is that we lose some of these elements.
In 2015, the global community agreed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est
A
accepté.
global pact to prevent potentially irreversible effects of climate change. But the Paris Agreement target refers to a long-term temperature average over a 20 to 30-year period. Breaching 1.5 once doesn't mean that from now on we will necessarily do so every year.
We are moving towards that world, and we indeed have seen the first occurrence of a 12-month period where this has happened. And next year or in 2 years' time will be just more likely for this to happen. And we are, in a sense, from a climate point of view, already in a 1.5 world without being yet there in the terms of the Paris Agreement.
But that doesn't make this new record less alarming. Global CO2 emissions are still rising and we are burning more coal, oil and gas than ever, with these countries using most of it. At the same time, investment in renewables is accelerating. Solar, wind, green energies are being deployed at record rates in places like the EU and China. But the decarbonization of the economies must speed up if heads of government want to keep their promises and permanently limit global warming to 1.5 degrees.